It was late afternoon in the spring of 1945 when the sound of boots suddenly stopped across the prisoner camp. The wind carried dust through the barbed wire, and dozens of German women prisoners stood frozen in place. They were exhausted, hollow-eyed, and terrified. Then they saw him, an American soldier on horseback. Not a truck, not a jeep, a horse, a tall cowboy from the American West, wide-brim hat low over his eyes, reins loose in his hand. For the women inside the camp, this made no sense. They had been taught Americans were brutal, loud, unpredictable. Yet this man rode slowly, calmly, as if he were crossing open land back home. One of the women collapsed. She didn't scream, she didn't fall dramatically. Her knees simply gave out. Weeks of hunger, fear, and humiliation finally claimed her strength. Guards stiffened. Other prisoners flinched. In camps like this, sudden movement often meant punishment. The American soldier dismounted instantly. For a moment, no one breathed. The woman lay in the dirt, her hair shorn close to her scalp, her uniform hanging loose from her frame. She tried to push herself up, panic flashing across her face. She had seen what happened to prisoners who couldn't stand. She whispered in German, barely audible, "Please, don't." The soldier didn't understand the words, but he understood the fear. He knelt beside her, slowly, deliberately, making sure every movement was visible. No shouting, no grabbing. He spoke softly, his voice low and calm. The women watching didn't know English, but they understood tone. This was not anger. This was not threat. Then he did something none of them expected. He lifted her, not roughly, not like cargo. He slid one arm behind her shoulders, the other under her knees, and raised her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. Gasps rippled through the camp. German women stared in disbelief. Guards instinctively stepped forward, unsure what to do. The soldier turned toward his horse. For the woman in his arms, time seemed to stop. She expected pain, a blow, humiliation. Instead, she felt the warmth of his jacket, smelled leather and dust, felt the steady rise and fall of his breath. He placed her gently onto the saddle. Someone dropped a spoon. Somewhere, a guard swallowed hard. The camp stopped breathing. German women had been marched, shoved, shouted at for months. Some had been arrested for working as nurses, clerks, radio operators. Others for nothing more than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. They had learned to make themselves invisible. But now all eyes were fixed on this single moment. The American soldier adjusted the reins, steadying the horse so she wouldn't fall. He spoke again, quietly. Then he did something even more shocking. He stayed beside her. He walked the horse himself, slow, step by slow step, leading it toward the infirmary tent instead of riding away. A cowboy on foot, holding the reins, making sure a former enemy didn't slip. Years later, one of the women who witnessed it would say, "That was the moment we understood the war was truly over." The woman on the horse began to cry, not loud sobs, silent tears that ran down her cheeks and disappeared into the dust. No one mocked her. No one looked away. For the first time since her capture, she wasn't being treated as a prisoner. She was being treated as a human being who had simply reached her limit. Inside the medical tent, American medics took over. They didn't ask questions. They didn't demand explanations. They gave her water first, then food, then a blanket. Outside, the cowboy stood quietly, hat in his hands. When he finally turned back toward the camp, the women were still watching him. Some clutched each other, some wiped their eyes. None of them spoke, because they all understood something in that moment. Power did not always look like cruelty. Victory did not always need humiliation. And sometimes the loudest moment in a prison camp was complete silence. Decades later, that woman would tell her granddaughter the story. Not about the hunger, not about the fear, but about the day a man on a horse lifted her up. And the world, just for a moment, felt human again. The camp froze when he reached down. No shouting, no orders, just silence. The German woman flinched, expecting punishment. Instead, the American cowboy lifted her gently onto his horse, steadying her as if she were fragile glass. Guards watched, prisoners held their breath. No one had ever seen this before. For months, she had been treated as an enemy, a burden, a problem. Now, she sat higher than everyone else, wrapped in a blanket, carried instead of pushed. Later, she would say that moment broke her more than hunger or fear. Because for the first time since the war began, someone saw her not as a prisoner, but as a human being. If this story stayed with you, if it made you pause, even for a second, then don't let it disappear. Like the video so this moment reaches more people.